All right, let's get started. That's loud. Hello. Hello. Midterms on Thursday. Do you guys want to talk about the midterm, or can I keep going, or do you want to like do some review? Or are you guys feeling good, or a couple slides of review? All right. Let me switch to some blanks then. So I will just walk through a couple, the basic graphs that we started with. We have like 5 or 6 things that we can graph that we started with, that we've done, that we should just all know cold, because they'll just be on there, just be able to reproduce a few graphs. So maybe we can start with indifference curve. You guys are gonna have to help me though. What's on the axes of the indifference curve? Good to goods. It's no prices, right? Just quantities. Indifference curve have a couple of properties. What are the properties? What's that? Don't cross. What are the other properties? Slope down. What else? There's a way that they slope downward. Convex, maybe? I never remember which one's which. What's that? Concave up. What does some people say? Moon-shaped. Concave up. Okay, so we have these properties. It's confusing, and it's came up on the problem set where people are like, what is this thing in difference curve? You're not giving me a mathematical representation. You're not giving me a formula that I can just plot those points. Like, how can that be? What is this thing? So the point is that you just know that there's some basket that's given to you, some consumption choice of these two goods, and you know that there's some line that slopes down, is concave, and is nested in a whole bunch of other slope lines. The don't cross sort of implies like there's a nest, and there's a set of these things that's mapping our preferences over these two goods. We want to consume a bundle of these two goods. We would trade, we usually think we don't want to have all x2. We trade some to get a little bit of x1. We don't want to have just x1. We would make do with bundles out there, but it takes us a lot of x2 to give up our last bits of x1. The way this is relevant is we can also map on this how much we can afford with a budget constraint. What are the properties of the budget constraint? What's that? It's straight. Hopefully money is straight. Straight, linear. What else? Where are the intercept or the slope? The slope is the price ratio. And what's the intercept? Where does it cross the axes? Income divided by, so the total amount that we have divided by price equals the intercept. So another way that I say that is if you spent all your money on x1, it would be this intercept. If you spent all your money on x2, it would be this intercept. So there's going to be some line. That's a really crappy straight line. But it's going to go through this bundle, and it's going to be tangent there. We're going to say this is the highest level of utility. Utility 1, utility 2, utility 3. Like these levels of utility are going up. The happier we are, the higher indifference curve we're on, the higher our welfare is. The highest one that we can afford just happens to be where it's tangent to the budget constraint. And that will give us quantities. If we read off of this, we'll get the quantities of x1 that we can, a constrained thing that we can afford. So what other things happen in this picture is the price changes. And what happens when the price changes to this picture? What happens to it? The budget constraint changes. How does it change when a price changes? The slope changes. So we would say if we're going to change the price of good 2, it would get steeper as the price of good 2 got higher. We could say in this also that, so this is a move in of the budget constraint. This could be a policy question of us taxing good 2. We say we want people to use less good 2. We're going to tax it. We're going to slope that line in. If we had more income, what would happen? The whole budget constraint would shift out. Okay. So that's our basic stuff on indifference curves. We, from there, have this classic supply-demand graph that we've seen a whole bunch of different times, so it might be worth reviewing just to be like, we started drawing these on the first day. So supply and demand implies that there's some equilibrium point where they're crossing. That will give us this equilibrium price and quantity. Market clearing price, market clearing quantity. We've gone back after day 1, and we also talked about demand being the willingness to pay. The area under demand, the volume under the demand, is the total willingness to pay. If we sum up the area, like these areas, if you think in calculus that we're doing some sort of integral under the demand curve, we have total willingness to pay. Our supply curve, we went back after, weeks later, and we also said that this was this marginal cost curve. So at different levels of price, different amounts of quantity are being supplied. And we said that the area under it, if we summed up all these areas under it all the way down to the bottom, would be the total variable cost. Is area under supply. So we've gone back and sort of backfilled some knowledge about this. And then we have our welfare, where we have these 2 big triangles that we're doing for our policy analysis. We have one triangle that's up here. What's that one called? Consumer surplus. And what's this one called? The producer surplus. Okay, so we have these welfare triangles and we want to measure them. We've done a problem set where the price changes, and we had a new price up here. Too many lines going on. Let me just try and get rid of some lines. We, in a problem set, had where the price went up to a new higher price, and we had now a trapezoid that we could measure the loss in consumer surplus from the increased corn price for the peasants who are eating corn. So we had, let's find the area of that trapezoid, and that's a welfare change. One other big thing that we do was let's do a tax on output. Let's do a tax on how much is being produced. So the way that we model that in this Econ 1 case is we say, we're going to put a tax on, and the tax is going to create a parallel line to the demand curve. And at every point, the height of this difference is going to be the tax rate. And this is going to be the after-tax demand that the firm is going to see. The consumers are going to stay on their demand curve, but the producers are going to only see the revenue that's minus the tax that's paid out for that. So now there's a place where the after-tax demand crosses the supply curve. And this was our policy instrument. We wanted to reduce output because it was causing pollution or was causing some externality that wasn't priced in. And we can talk about this later in the class as part of today's material, but here is our Q with the tax. It's smaller. We pushed it in. We have a point here where it crosses, and a point here where it crosses supply, and a point where it crosses demand. So there's the price with the tax, and the producers are going to get this price with the tax. This will be the price to the supply, and this will be the price to demand. And there's a box now that's this rectangle. What's that called? What's that? Tax revenue, right. So the height of it will be the tax, and we'll multiply it times the number of units, and that will be the tax revenue. So it'll be easy to figure out how much revenue is being generated. We have some more triangles. We could say this triangle here, where this triangle here will be a loss triangle, deadweight loss from a tax. And we already know that when the price is going up, we know how to calculate a change in consumer surplus. We did that already. So this consumer surplus is smaller. This producer surplus is smaller. We've seen a change in producer surplus here and a change in consumer surplus here. We can calculate those out. We can make sort of like a policy analysis of the incidence of this tax. If we wanted to know how to analyze the policy of this tax, what would be some important things to know about? That would be more than just this price and quantity. We would need to know about these slopes, right? The slopes of supply and demand. And we would also say the elasticities. The own price elasticities of supply and demand are going to tell us how much, if we increase price, the quantity will change. If we're trying to drive down quantity because we want the electricity generating facilities to use less coal, and it turns out the elasticity of demand for coal-fired electricity is very steep, then we could put a big tax on and we're not going to get a big shift inward. If we think that people living in cities, they could drive, but if there's too much traffic, they just assume jump on the bus or the BART, so maybe it's more elastic, the cost for them to commute. So if we jack up the cost of gasoline, those people will get out of their cars. We need to have information in order to do policy. Like in this simple Econ 1 class, we're just drawing straight lines. But to do the policy analysis right, we're going to have information about the price elasticities. So that's the basic ones that we've done for demand. Then we did a whole bunch of things on costs, internal costs to the firm. And I can keep going on that today. But let's just do a couple review slides. So the real one that we had some ones on total cost, but it was really the marginal cost and average cost that were driving our analysis. So on the axis here, we have dollars per unit of output. And we have units of output. And we have a few different lines to draw here. We have average total cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost, marginal cost. Unfortunately, these are in the next problem set, which comes after the midterm, but hence is the sequence of life. What's average fixed cost is easy. What's average fixed cost look like? Makes that kind of sound when it goes down. All right, hold on. All right. So we have a chunk of money that we spent on our factory. The more and more we produce, the less and less it's going to be on average. It's sloping down like that. And then we would have some average total cost. The difference between average total cost and average variable cost mathematically is average fixed cost. So we know as average fixed cost goes down, average variable cost is going to end up close to average total cost. Okay? And then at the bottom of both of average variable cost and average total cost, we know that marginal cost is going to pass through those bottom points. So marginal cost. So so there's a couple of key points on here. Points where things cross. Anybody can tell me what these 2 points are? This was on the midterm last year. Shutdown point. What happens at the shutdown point? Yep, which kind of implies a shutdown price. Yep. But you could also say, at any less than this level of production, they're going to lose money. They're going to just close the factory and just eat the fixed costs. At any point higher than this, they're going to be able to cover some of their fixed costs because their variable costs are paid. So what's this point up here? And this price? Profits equal 0. Profit equals 0. We could say any time past this point, profits are greater than 0. Any price higher than this price, there will be some profits. So if we are a price taker, yeah?
Oh, sorry, so I'm just making sure I understand. So the shutdown point, they would be operating at a loss, but they would still be covering some of their fixed costs.
Yep.
Okay. And so then below it, they're not paying even any of their fixed costs.
They just shut down and just, it's not worth it because they're even losing on the fixed cost. So it's the cost of quantity plus 1 minus the cost of quantity. So we did it in the spreadsheet, and we're like, as the cost goes up, it's the cost of that next set of production. When you do that, you net out fixed costs. So importantly, like you're subtracting out fixed costs every time. So it's the change in average variable cost. But I tried to motivate that with the spreadsheet. Do firms operate at a loss sometimes? All the time, often, many firms. Startups, right? Startups are like thousands of firms operating at a loss for that one firm that's going to get a profit.
So we talked a lot about how firms in the economy for the long term have zero profit.
Yep.
Is that, that sounds wrong, but is that okay because investors will invest in them and that becomes profitable business? Like, how does that
So so part of that answer to that question is about the economic profit versus accounting profit. So we would say that the economic profit will go to 0 because the amount that will be returned to the capital investing in it will be the same as in other activities. So that's still returning something. Say we say like a long-term growth rate is 5%. You invest something in different parts of the economy or take out a mortgage or different areas, the growth rate of capital is roughly 5%, different returns. So the firm could have an accounting profit that's going to their owners that's something roughly around 5% long-term on average. And another way to think about it is somebody owning the firm could be paying themselves a salary. So people could be making money like their salary for being the manager or for being the entrepreneur could be positive. People can make lots of money in salaries, but is net, like, is just going to profit going to accumulate over time. And that was all perfect competition. So later in the class, we can talk about a whole bunch of oligopoly, monopoly, and think about all the places where firms have some way to protect their profits from market entry that would be driving this down. Does that help? Yes. Okay. People can pay themselves giant salaries and lose money. Like we know this from the big corporations, right? Like so that somebody could be losing money but make a giant salary, right? So one would be their accounting profit and one would be their economic profit. The other, just really quick, I want to get back to the lecture and stop being too distracted. The other thing that we had was the isoquant and the isocost, which was sort of an analog to the budget constraint. So we have two inputs into production. We have this concave production function. So this will get us one level of output. If we want to get a higher level of output, we need a whole other set of bundles of inputs that will get us to that higher level of output. This is increasing level of output, and this is our decision between different bundles of inputs. The classic one is capital and labor. We could have more machines or more people, but we need some combination of machines and people to produce. We would have bundles that would reflect the trade-off. We could have a factory full of robots with few workers, a factory full of workers with few robots. Right? And we see this happening. Like this is manufacture in the US or Germany, this is manufacture in Indonesia or Vietnam or China, right? We have companies deciding this regularly. Which one's going to get greater reliability, robots or people? They're trying to decide this regularly. Which one has a different tax treatment because you invest in machines is different than when you invest in people. So this is higher and higher levels of production. And there's an isocost line that similarly, the slope is by the ratio of the prices of these two factors of production. This point where it's tangent would be the minimum cost that you could produce this quantity with. So this is if you bought just input 1, this is if you bought just input 2, and with a fixed amount of money, you could buy these different sets of inputs. You want to have the lowest cost and the highest output, so you're going to get to some point of tangency where they just touch. We did this, the textbook sample is about the Salinas Valley lettuce and water versus nitrogen, and what ways could we change the slope of this line so that they would use less water, and that would get to different bundles. Maybe they would use more nitrogen and less water, because we're trying to regulate that to protect the groundwater. All right, I'm going to switch back to the lecture, but we can carry on. Good question? Yep. The other one's isoquant. Isoquant has a curvature. Isocost is like a linear straight line with price ratios. Full screen. So anyways, come here at 8 a.m., bring a blue book, bring the big blue book, bring a pencil and eraser. The DSP students will be going to 224 Moffett. Hopefully you got an email from me. You could write me an email back if you got that email. The other thing I want to say that I'll say later, but April 1, which I think is the first day after spring break, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be in LA. And I am planning to record a lecture and put it on the webcast. So hopefully you can watch it there if that's okay with you guys. If not, I could reschedule time or I could meet with you another time, but hopefully you can just watch one of the lectures and I'll keep going in the sequence. And happy to make it up other ways if you'd like. All right, so we're going to talk about market power and price discrimination, so how producers work on keeping more of the profits to themselves. And then we can go into the Chapter 10 stuff on social marginal costs after that if we get to it, but that's less on the midterm, so there's less time. So here, let's do one more drawing like we were just doing. We were in the monopoly case. And what happens in the monopoly case is that the monopolist sees the downward sloping demand curve. They're not getting a price from the market, price or dollars per unit output. Here's our unit output. Because every additional unit that they produce decreases the price that they get, they now have this marginal revenue curve that is more steeply sloped than the demand curve. In a simple case, it's twice the slope, and it's negative. It's twice the negative slope. And then in here, we're going to have the supply curve of the firm is the marginal cost curve of the firm. And because it's a monopolist, it's both the firm and the market supply curve. And then we have some average cost curve for the firm. And the monopolist is going to set quantity. They can determine how much is going to get sold in this market, and the price will be set from that. So they'll set marginal cost equal to marginal revenue at this point. And this will be the quantity that will be supplied under monopoly. The market clearing amount would have been this. Go away. This amount. Let's say that this is supply equals marginal cost of the firm. So this is the quantity under perfect competition.